The twin suns were setting behind the metal dunes of Outpost 12, painting the sky in shades of gold and silver. The air shimmered with heat and the faint hum of old engines echoed through the scrapyard. Inside a small workshop near the edge of the settlement, a human mechanic named Ryan wiped his hands with a rag. His workbench was cluttered with broken ship parts, wires, and half-finished machines. Ryan lived alone. His days were quiet, filled with the rhythm of repairs and the sounds of tools against metal. He had come to this forgotten corner of the galaxy years ago, seeking peace after the endless noise of war. Humans were not common here, but Ryan did not mind. He liked solitude. Machines made sense to him. They were honest when they broke, and they stayed fixed when repaired. As the suns dipped lower, Ryan switched off the main power. He was about to close for the night when he heard something unusual. A faint noise came from outside the workshop. It was soft, almost like a whimper. He frowned and stepped out into the cooling evening. The scrapyard stretched around him, filled with rusting hulls and fallen ships. The sound came again. Ryan followed it carefully. His boots crunched over the sand and metal. Behind a broken cargo hauler, he found a small movement near the shadows. When he leaned closer, he froze. Two small creatures were hiding there. Their scales were dull blue and green, their wings folded close against their thin bodies. They were breathing heavily, eyes wide with fear. Dragons. He had never seen one up close before. Most humans only heard stories about the Dracona, a proud and ancient race who ruled far beyond human space. Their empire was said to be majestic but merciless, yet the two in front of him were not mighty. They looked young, weak, and hurt. Ryan knelt slowly, not wanting to scare them. One of them, the smaller one with a torn wing, hissed weakly and tried to shield the other. Ryan raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy there," he said in a calm voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragons watched him with suspicion. He could see their ribs through the scales. They had been starving. Ryan glanced back toward his workshop, thinking quickly. He had some food, mostly nutrient paste and dried bread. It was not much, but better than nothing. He stepped away, giving them space, and returned a few minutes later with a small metal tray. On it were 2 bowls of warm paste and water. The little dragon stared at it as if unsure what to do. The smaller one sniffed the air, then looked at Ryan again. "It's safe," Ryan said softly. "Eat." The older dragon nudged the smaller one forward. Slowly they began to eat. Ryan sat down nearby, watching silently. The way they devoured the food broke his heart. Whatever had happened to them must have been terrible. After a while, their breathing slowed. The younger one, whose wing was damaged, tried to stretch, but winced in pain. Ryan moved closer and studied the injury. The bone was not broken, only twisted and bruised. "He could fix that. I can help with that," he said. The dragons tensed again. "I fix things. Machines, mostly. But I can fix that wing, too." The older dragon looked at him for a long time, then gave a small nod. Ryan took it as permission. He fetched his medkit and worked carefully. His hands were steady, his voice calm as he spoke softly to them. He wrapped the wing with light bandage strips soaked in healing gel. The small dragon shivered at first, but then relaxed. When he finished, he stood up and stepped back. "There, you'll need rest, little one." The dragon stayed near the workshop that night. Ryan brought them an old blanket and a heat lamp to keep them warm. He slept inside but kept the door slightly open in case they needed him. In the early hours, he woke to a soft sound. The dragons had moved inside, curling up near his workbench where the floor was warmer. Ryan smiled slightly and let them stay. The next morning, the outpost came alive with noise. Traders shouted prices, engines rumbled, and ships took off toward the horizon. Ryan worked on a damaged transport engine, but his thoughts kept drifting to his unusual guests. When he brought them breakfast, they seemed a bit stronger. The smaller dragon tried to stand, wobbling slightly but managing to stretch its wing. Ryan was pleased. "You're healing fast," he said. "That's good." He noticed that their scales had started to shine faintly again. They looked less afraid now. The older dragon even helped him by moving some small tools with its tail. Ryan laughed quietly. "You're a better helper than half the people I've hired before." By the 3rd day, the dragons began exploring the workshop. They watched Ryan work, eyes bright with curiosity. They seemed fascinated by human tools. Ryan explained how things worked even though he was not sure if they understood. Sometimes the smaller one tried to mimic him, holding a wrench in its claws and tapping at bolts. At night, they listened to the hum of machines together. Ryan told them simple stories about stars and ships, about how humans traveled far to find new homes. The dragons listened quietly, their tails flicking slowly. They never spoke. Ryan had heard that dragons could communicate through voice or thought, but these two remained silent. Still, there was a kind of understanding between them. A week passed. The dragons were much stronger now. Their scales shimmered under the workshop lights. The smaller one flew short distances, wings fluttering. The older one often watched the sky as if expecting someone. One evening, Ryan asked, "Are you waiting for someone to come get you?" The dragons looked at each other but did not respond. Ryan sighed. He had grown attached to them. He knew they could not stay forever. The outpost was not safe for their kind. Many feared dragons, and others might try to capture them for profit or power. That night, he sat outside his workshop, staring at the stars. The dragons curled up beside him. The silence between them felt peaceful. "You'll have to go soon," he said softly. "Wherever your home is, I hope you find it." The smaller dragon pressed its head against his arm as if it understood. The next morning, Ryan found them gone. The blanket lay folded near the door. On his workbench was a single scale, bright and gold, glowing faintly like captured sunlight. He held it in his palm, feeling warmth spread through his fingers. He smiled sadly. "Goodbye, little ones." He placed the scale in a small glass case on his shelf. It became the only decoration in his simple workshop. Days turned into months. The story of the two dragons faded into memory. Ryan returned to his work, fixing broken ships and helping travelers. Sometimes when the sky was quiet, he thought he heard faint wings above the clouds. He would step outside and look up, but there was never anything there. Still, he liked to believe they had survived. Outpost 12 remained dusty and forgotten, but Ryan found comfort in his solitude. He had helped 2 lives once, and that was enough. He never expected anything in return. Yet somewhere, far beyond the outer systems, word of his kindness traveled through whispers. The Dracona Empire had begun to stir, and though Ryan did not know it, the small act of feeding 2 hungry dragons would one day echo through the stars. 5 long years passed since the night Ryan found and fed the 2 young dragons in the scrapyard of Outpost 12. The memory of that evening never left his mind. Sometimes, when he walked past the broken hauler where he had first seen them, he would stop for a moment and look into the shadows as if expecting them to return, but they never did. Life moved on in its usual quiet rhythm. The outpost had grown busier as new trade routes opened nearby. Travelers from many worlds now passed through seeking repairs, fuel, or rest. Ryan had become one of the most trusted mechanics in the region. His hands were steady, his prices were fair, and his machines always worked better than before. Every ship that came to him carried stories from faraway systems. He listened while working, pretending not to care, but his heart always paid attention when someone mentioned the Dracona Empire. The dragons had risen in power. Their Empress had united clans that once fought among themselves. Her guards patrolled distant space. Her fleets crossed star paths once ruled by pirates, and her name was spoken with both fear and respect. Ryan sometimes wondered if the 2 dragons he helped were part of that empire now. He hoped they were safe and free. He had no idea that his simple kindness had already become a legend whispered among the stars. One morning, Ryan was working on a transport ship that had suffered plasma coil damage. His new helper, a young miner named Lean, stood nearby watching him with wide eyes. "Master Ryan," Lean said, "is it true that once a royal ship passed through here and you repaired it in one night?" Ryan gave a small smile. "That was just a trader with a bad hyperdrive." "Nothing royal about it," Lean laughed. "You make it sound simple, but no one fixes a drive that fast." Ryan shrugged. "Machines talk if you listen to them long enough." Lean admired him. Everyone in the outpost respected Ryan. He never boasted and never refused anyone who needed help. Sometimes he accepted payment, sometimes he didn't. To him, fixing things was not just work, it was purpose. As the suns climbed higher, a group of travelers arrived. Their ship was scorched from battle. The markings on the hull showed they were refugees from the outer sectors. Ryan helped them without asking questions. He noticed 2 children among them, frightened and hungry. When he brought food for them, the memory of the little dragons returned so strongly that he stopped for a moment, feeling warmth in his chest. That night, After everyone left, Rian sat outside his workshop. The metal sands glowed under the twin moons. He looked up at the stars, wondering again where Mira and Taro might be. He did not know their names, but in his mind he had given them simple ones so he could remember them more easily. He still kept the small golden scale on his shelf. Sometimes when the night was silent, the scale shimmered faintly as if touched by unseen light. Months rolled into years. Outpost 12 became a crossroads for traders and travelers. With more traffic came more trouble. Smugglers and scavengers often passed through, and not all of them came in peace. One day, a group of armed men entered Ryan's workshop. Their ship had a damaged reactor, but instead of asking for help, they demanded parts. Ryan stood calmly and told them he would not give them anything for free. The leader, a tall man with red markings on his jacket, stepped closer with a sneer. "You think you can say no to us, old man?" He growled. Ryan did not raise his voice. "You came here for repairs. I fix machines, not attitudes. If you want your ship working, pay what it costs." The men laughed and began to grab tools from the shelves. Lean, who was nearby, froze in fear. Ryan walked forward and pressed a control switch on his workbench. The floor panels shifted and heavy steel shutters dropped from the ceiling, locking the doors. "You should know," Ryan said evenly, "that I build more than engines. I build defenses." He pressed another switch and the air filled with a sharp hum. The intruders' weapons overloaded and sparked in their hands. The leader cursed and dropped his blaster. "You can leave," Ryan said, "or you can stay and see how I recycle unwanted visitors." The men backed away, muttering threats, and fled into the street. When they were gone, Leon looked at him in amazement. "How did you do that?" Ryan smiled faintly. "It pays to prepare. People may think I am only a mechanic, but I prefer surprises on my side." Leon nodded with respect. From that day, no one tried to rob Rian again. Word spread quickly that the quiet human mechanic had more power than he showed. Time flowed like sand through the desert. Ryan's hair turned gray, though his hands never lost their strength. He still repaired ships, still walked through the scrapyard at dusk, and still watched the stars when the nights grew quiet. Every few months, strange lights would appear high above the outpost, silent flashes moving across the sky. People said they were patrols of the Dracona Empire, watching trade routes. Ryan often stepped outside to see them. The ships were distant and bright like moving stars. He felt an unexplainable pull whenever he saw them. Once an old trader from the inner systems came to him with an engine filled with strange crystal cores. While Ryan repaired it, the man spoke about recent events. "They say the Empress herself has built a new capital on the world of Serath," the trader said. "A palace of fire and crystal. Her rule stretches farther each year." Ryan nodded. "I have heard of her." "They also say," the trader continued, lowering his voice, "that the Empress searches for someone. A human of all things. No one knows why." Ryan looked up from his work. "A human?" "Yes, some believe he once helped the royal family. Others think it's only a story. But the Dracona rarely speak of humans. Whoever that man is, he must be special." Ryan said nothing more. When the trader left, he stood for a long time, staring at the golden scale on his shelf. The light from the setting suns made it glow softly. He wondered if it was coincidence or if the story was somehow about him. One evening, a violent storm hit the outpost. The winds howled through the metal dunes and lightning lit up the sky in electric blue flashes. Ryan and Lean secured the workshop, making sure all ships were grounded and all power lines stable. When the storm grew too strong, Lean went home, but Ryan stayed to monitor the systems. Late in the night, when the storm began to fade, a sudden explosion shook the ground. Ryan ran outside and saw smoke rising near the northern landing field. A small ship had crashed there, its hull glowing from re-entry burns. Without hesitation, he grabbed his tools and ran through the rain to help. The pilot was a young reptilian creature, unconscious but breathing. Ryan pulled him out of the wreckage and carried him back to the workshop. When he began repairs on the ship, he noticed the same style of markings that once appeared on the dragon's scales. It was a design used by the Dracona Empire. Rian patched the ship through the night. When the pilot finally woke, his voice was weak but clear. "You are human." "Yes," Ryan said. "You are Dracona." The pilot nodded slowly. "I was on a scouting mission. Pirates attacked. I escaped but lost control in the storm." "You saved me." Rian smiled faintly. "I fix what's broken. That's what I do." The pilot studied him for a long time, then noticed the golden scale on the shelf behind Rian. His eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" Ryan turned to look at it. "It was left by two young dragons. They came here years ago. I helped them when they were lost." The pilot stared in silence. "Two young dragons? Do you remember their colors?" "One was green with gold streaks, the other blue with silver edges." The pilot's expression changed completely. He stood slowly, almost trembling. "You saved them. You saved the royal heirs," Rian blinked. "Royal heirs?" The pilot bowed his head deeply. "They are now Empress Mira and General Taro of the Dracona Empire." Ryan felt his breath catch in his chest. He looked again at the golden scale, realizing it was not just a memory, it was a royal symbol. The pilot continued speaking, his voice filled with awe. "The Empress has searched for the human who saved her and her brother. Her royal guard travels across the stars to find you." Ryan sat down slowly. He felt both shock and confusion. "Why would she search for me? I only gave them food." "To you it was food," the pilot said softly. "To them it was life. You gave them a chance to live when no one else would. The Empress has never forgotten." The pilot left the next day after repairing his ship fully. Before leaving, he saluted Rian with respect. "The Empress will find you soon, mechanic. Be ready." Ryan watched the ship rise into the sky, its engines glowing like twin suns. He stood alone in the wind, feeling a strange mixture of pride and fear. He had no wish for reward or fame, yet destiny had already marked his path. That night he looked up once again at the stars. Somewhere out there, two dragons he once saved had become rulers of an empire. He smiled quietly, unaware that their royal guards were already setting their course toward Outpost 12. The morning began like any other at Outpost 12. The suns were climbing over the horizon and the air shimmered with soft heat. Ryan was already awake, preparing his tools for another long day of work. The smell of metal and oil filled the workshop as he checked each machine carefully. Lean entered a few moments later, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "Morning, Master Rian," he said. "Morning, Lean," Ryan replied without looking up. "We have two ships waiting for repair today. A trader's shuttle and a mining hauler. Check their fuel lines first." Lean nodded and went to work. Everything seemed normal. But above the quiet noise of the workshop, a deep vibration began to roll through the ground. The tools on the shelves rattled. The air itself seemed to hum. Lean stopped working and looked up. "What was that?" Ryan frowned and walked outside. The sky was clear, but something was moving across it. Something massive. A dark shadow stretched over the outpost, and then a second followed. The people in the streets began to point and shout. High above them, two enormous ships descended from the upper atmosphere. Their hulls glowed like molten gold, covered in markings that shimmered in the sunlight. The roar of their engines shook the entire outpost. Ryan's heart started beating faster. He knew that symbol. It was the royal crest of the Dracona Empire. The ships slowed, hovering above the metal dunes. Then smaller vessels dropped from their bellies, sleek and shaped like wings. They glided down and landed near the edge of the outpost, raising clouds of dust and light. Lean stared in disbelief. "That's the Empress Guard," he whispered. "Why are they here?" Ryan's hands tightened on the railing. He had been expecting something like this ever since the young pilot told him the truth. But seeing it with his own eyes still sent a wave of shock through him. He turned to Lean. "Stay inside and lock the doors." "But—" "Do as I say," Ryan ordered firmly. Lean nodded and ran back into the workshop. Rian walked slowly toward the landing site. The air shimmered from the heat of the engines. Dust swirled around him as the first of the royal guard stepped out. They were tall and strong, wearing dark armor that gleamed with the same golden hue as the ships. Their faces were covered with dragon-like masks, and their movements were disciplined and precise. At their head stood a figure taller than the rest. The armor was decorated with crimson lines and a crest shaped like wings and flame. When the figure removed the helmet, Ryan saw a face that was both human and dragon. The eyes burned with light, and the skin held faint scales that caught the sun. The guard leader stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Human mechanic Rian," he said in a deep, clear voice. "By command of Her Majesty Empress Mira of the Dracona Empire, we have come for you." The crowd that had gathered around gasped in fear. No one had ever seen the royal guard on a human world before. People whispered among themselves, wondering what crime the mechanic could have committed. Rian stood still, His voice was calm when he spoke. And if I refuse? The guard leader looked at him with respect rather than anger. Refusal is not an option, but you have no reason to fear. The Empress herself has sent us to bring you to her. You will be treated with honor. Ryan hesitated. The words were polite, but the presence of soldiers and ships made it clear that this was not a request. Still, there was no hatred in their eyes, only purpose. He nodded slowly. Give me a moment to prepare. The leader inclined his head. We will wait. Ryan turned and walked back toward his workshop. The people moved aside for him, whispering his name. Lean met him at the door, his face pale. Master Ryan, what do they want? They want me to come with them, Ryan said quietly. Lean shook his head. You can't go. They're from the Empire. You don't owe them anything. Ryan placed a hand on his shoulder. 5 years ago, I helped 2 young dragons. They were lost and afraid. I think I am about to learn who they truly were. Lean looked confused. You mean, I have to go, Ryan said. Take care of the workshop until I return. He walked to his shelf and opened a small box. Inside was the golden scale that had been left for him so long ago. He held it for a moment, feeling its familiar warmth, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. When he returned to the landing site, the guards stepped aside, forming 2 perfect lines. The leader gestured toward a smaller ship, elegant and made of silver alloy. This vessel will take you to the royal cruiser, he said. Ryan climbed aboard. The doors sealed with a soft hiss and the engines hummed. Through the window, he saw the outpost growing smaller as the ship lifted into the sky. The people below watched silently until they became only dots against the desert. As the ship ascended, Ryan felt a strange mix of peace and nervousness. The stars above seemed brighter than ever. When they broke through the upper atmosphere, the larger cruiser came into view, a massive vessel that dwarfed every ship he had ever seen. Its design was a blend of beauty and power, shaped like a dragon with wings spread wide. The hull shimmered with colors that changed with the light, and at its center was the glowing symbol of the royal crest. The smaller ship docked smoothly into one of its bays. The doors opened, and the same guard leader motioned for Ryan to follow. The corridors of the cruiser were made of crystal and metal. Light flowed through the walls like living energy. Every sound echoed softly, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and flame. Ryan walked with steady steps, his eyes moving across the strange but graceful architecture. They entered a grand hall filled with guards standing at attention. At the far end stood a large set of doors carved with patterns of dragons and stars. The guard leader stopped and turned to him. Beyond these doors is the throne chamber, he said. The Empress awaits you, Ryan nodded. The doors opened slowly and light spilled into the corridor. Inside, the chamber was vast and radiant. The ceiling arched high above like the inside of a great dome. Pillars of crystal rose from the floor, each pulsing with soft energy. At the center, upon a raised platform, sat the Dracona Empress herself. Ryan froze. He recognized her at once. The eyes were the same bright gold he had seen 5 years ago. The faint scar on her wing matched the injury he had once bandaged. She was grown now, tall and graceful, wearing armor of light and silver. Her presence filled the room with warmth and strength. She looked down at him with a soft smile. Ryan of Outpost 12, she said. Her voice was calm and powerful. At last we meet again, Ryan bowed slightly. Your Majesty. She rose from her throne and walked down the steps. Her steps were silent, but the energy around her seemed alive. When she stopped before him, she studied his face for a long moment. You have not changed much, she said. I remember you just as you were when I was small and frightened. Ryan's voice was quiet. You were the little one with the torn wing, she nodded. And you were the human who shared his food and warmth with 2 lost creatures when no one else would. The hall remained silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. I never knew you were royal, Ryan said. The Empress smiled gently. I was not royal when you met me. My brother and I were fugitives then. Our parents had been betrayed, our home destroyed. You fed us when we had nothing left. Because of you, we lived long enough to reach the stars again. Ryan looked down, unsure what to say. I only did what anyone should have done. Few would have done it, she replied. Your kindness gave birth to a future neither of us could have imagined. The Empire owes its life to a human mechanic. She turned to her guards. This is the one we have searched for. The keeper of the heirs. The guards struck their staffs to the floor in perfect unison. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Rian felt uneasy at the sudden honor. "I am no keeper, your majesty. I am just a mechanic." The Empress's eyes softened. "You are more than that. You remind us that compassion has no species. You taught us that strength without kindness is empty." She stepped closer and placed her hand over her heart. "I have waited 5 years to thank you properly. Whatever you ask, it will be granted." Rian shook his head slowly. "I need nothing, your majesty. I am content where I am." The Empress looked at him with a mixture of surprise and respect. "Then at least accept our friendship. The Dracona Empire stands as your ally. Outpost 12 will be protected under our guard," Rian bowed. "That is more than I could ever ask," she smiled. "Then stay with us for a while. See what your kindness created." For the next few days, Rian was treated as a royal guest. He toured the grand halls of the cruiser and saw technologies far beyond human reach. The engineers of the Empire spoke with him eagerly, amazed by his simple yet brilliant understanding of machines. He learned that Mira's brother, Taro, now commanded the royal fleet. He was away on a mission near the Outer Rim, but word of Rian's arrival had already been sent to him. Everywhere Rian went, people greeted him with respect. They called him the Keeper, a title that made him both proud and uncomfortable. At night, he stood by the viewing window of his quarters, looking out at the stars. The Empire stretched across the horizon like a sea of light. He thought of his small workshop, his quiet life, and Lean waiting for him back at the outpost. He did not yet know it, but his journey was far from over. Beyond the horizon, fleets were gathering and old enemies of the dragons were stirring once more. The Empress would soon face her greatest challenge. And when that moment, the grand cruiser floated silently through the void of space, its golden hull glimmering under distant starlight. Rian walked along the polished corridors, his steps echoing softly against the walls of crystal and metal. Everywhere he looked, he saw wonders he had never imagined. Devices that hummed with energy he could barely understand, machines that moved on their own, and walls that shifted light to illuminate his path. Yet nothing in the ship impressed him as much as the purpose behind it, the life and empire that had grown from 2 small dragons he had once fed. He was guided by the royal guard to a private chamber, far smaller and simpler than the throne room. A low bench, a small table, and a window that looked out into the infinite black of space were all it contained. Rian sat, feeling the weight of everything that had happened in the last few days. He had met the Empress, been called the Keeper of the Airs, and now he was to learn more about why he was summoned. The guard leader, whose name Rian now knew was Commander Krell, entered and stood at attention. "Your Majesty wishes to speak with you privately," he said. "She requests your presence in the private audience hall." Rian nodded, standing. The corridor seemed longer than before. He felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He had come expecting gratitude and respect, yet the words of Commander Krell hinted at something more profound, something he had never imagined. The doors to the private hall opened and Rian stepped inside. The room was bathed in soft golden light. At the far end, the Empress stood near a tall window, gazing out at the stars. When she turned, her eyes locked with his, and for a moment the years vanished. "Mira," Rian whispered. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. "You remember me?" "I could never forget you," he said softly. "Not after what I saw that night." She approached him slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. Her wings, folded neatly behind her, shimmered faintly, catching the light like liquid gold. "Rian, the human who gave us food and hope," she said, her voice calm yet powerful. "Do you understand what your actions meant to us?" He shook his head. "I only fed 2 small dragons. I did not know who you were or that you would survive. I only did what I thought was right." The Empress reached out and placed a hand on the table between them. "Because of your kindness, we survived. You kept us alive when no one else would. My brother Taro and I were only children. Our parents had fallen, our clan was hunted, and the galaxy seemed a dark place. You gave us a chance to grow, to become who we are today." Rian felt a warmth spread through his chest. He had always believed that small acts of kindness mattered. But hearing it from her, seeing it in her eyes, made him realize the full weight of that night. "You mean," he said slowly, "I saved the rulers of an empire." She nodded, a quiet pride in her expression. "Not only rulers. You saved our lives, our people, and the future of the Dracona Empire. We owe everything to you." You may not have asked for it, but your choice shaped the stars themselves. Ryan sank into the bench, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. I never thought my actions could matter on this scale. I'm just a mechanic. I fix machines. The Empress shook her head gently. No, Ryan, you are more than a mechanic. You are a symbol of compassion, courage, and wisdom. You taught us that strength is not measured by power alone, but by the care we show to those in need. Your small act changed the fate of countless lives. Ryan looked out the window. The stars stretched infinitely before him, and he thought of the quiet nights in his workshop, the shimmering golden scale on his shelf, and the two small dragons who had trusted him. He felt a deep sense of connection across space and time, as if the universe itself had brought them together for a reason. You have heard of the Empress Guard, Mira continued. They are here to protect you as they protect the Empire. They obey my command, but they have also been told your story. They know your deeds and the significance of your presence. Ryan nodded slowly. I see, so I am under your protection now. Not just protection, she said, her eyes meeting his. You are part of our legacy. You are a living reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change the galaxy. This is why we sought you, Ryan. To honor you, to thank you, and to invite you to witness what your actions have made possible. The words settled over him like a soft weight. For the first time, he felt the full impact of his choices. It was not power or wealth he had gained, but something far greater. The knowledge that a simple human act had saved lives, shaped empires, and inspired loyalty across species. Mira gestured toward a side corridor. Come with me. I wish to show you something. Ryan followed her, stepping through the glowing halls. Every corner of the cruiser reflected light in ways he had never seen. Machines moved with quiet purpose. Guards patrolled with precise steps, and the air hummed with energy. It was a city in motion, a place alive with technology and life. Yet every element seemed connected to a central heart, the vision of the Empress and her brother. They arrived at a large chamber filled with ships, some still under construction, others fully operational. Mira stopped and gestured for him to look closer. These are the fleet ships that defend our empire. Every vessel you see here was built with the knowledge that survival often depends on ingenuity, courage, and care. Principles you demonstrated when you helped us. Ryan walked among the ships, studying the designs. They were elegant yet practical, engineered for speed, defense, and endurance. I don't know what to say, he murmured. You need not say anything, Mira replied. Actions speak louder than words. Your actions have already spoken across the stars. At that moment, a figure entered the chamber, a tall dragon in human form, wearing armor decorated with intricate patterns. His presence was commanding yet calm. Ryan recognized him immediately. Taro, Mira said softly. The figure bowed slightly. Ryan, I am grateful beyond measure for your courage and compassion. My sister and I would not be here if it were not for you. Ryan felt his breath catch. He had remembered the small blue dragon with the silver edges and the green dragon with gold streaks. These two were no longer children but leaders. The memory of their tiny, hungry forms returned vividly, and he realized the magnitude of what he had done. I only fed you, he said quietly. I did what I thought was right. Taro stepped closer. What you did was far more than feeding us. You saved our lives. You gave us a chance to survive when the universe had turned its back on us. That is not a small thing. It is everything. Ryan shook his head, humbled. He had never expected recognition or thanks. Yet here, in this moment, he understood that his life had changed the fate of countless beings. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. You have already done more than any human has ever done in this galaxy. Now we wish to show you the future your actions helped create. You will see the empire that exists because of a choice you made out of simple kindness. They guided him to a large observation deck. Through the transparent crystal walls, the galaxy stretched before him like an endless ocean of stars. Fleets moved gracefully between planets, ships carrying supplies, citizens, and ambassadors. Worlds that had once been at war were now connected through diplomacy and trust, a network that owed its beginnings to the survival of two small dragons. Ryan stood in awe. I never imagined this, he whispered. I never imagined it could be like this. Mira smiled gently. None of us did, but it is. Because of a human who chose to act with compassion rather than indifference, the stars are safer, the empire stronger, and hope lives in countless hearts. Your kindness is the foundation of all this. He felt a deep sense of peace. He realized that being a mechanic, A simple human had never been small. He had power, yes, but in a different form. The power to change lives through empathy, courage, and action. Taro stepped beside him. Ryan, you will always be welcome here. You need not leave if you do not wish. You are part of our story now, and that is something no force in the galaxy can undo. Ryan looked at the two dragons he had once saved, now rulers and protectors of a great empire. He smiled quietly, understanding at last the true impact of his choices. Then I will stay for a while, he said. I want to see what my small act has made possible. Mira and Taro nodded. The golden scale he had kept for years glimmered faintly in his pocket, as if it knew that the time of reunion had come. In that moment, Ryan realized that even the smallest hand extended in kindness could echo across time and space. The lives of many depended not only on strength or skill but on compassion. He had learned this lesson firsthand, and now he would witness the empire that rose because of it. The stars stretched endlessly before them, shining like the promise of a future built on hope, courage, and the quiet acts of a human who dared to care. Ryan woke in the quiet of the royal cruiser, sunlight streaming through the crystal windows. For the first time in 5 years, he felt fully awake in a world larger than his small workshop. The events of the past few days still lingered in his mind. He had met Mira and Taro, the dragons he had saved as younglings, and now he walked among the empire they ruled. He realized that his life had changed forever, though not in the ways he had ever imagined. The corridors were alive with motion. Royal engineers worked on ships, guards practiced formations, and scholars consulted maps of the galaxy. Ryan followed Mira and Taro to a private garden in the heart of the cruiser, a place designed for reflection and learning. The garden was filled with plants from many worlds. Some glowed with soft light, others swayed gently as if aware of the presence of the visitors. The air smelled sweet, warm, and comforting. Mira stopped near a small fountain, the water sparkling like crystal fire. Ryan, she said softly, this is the center of our empire. Here the rulers and their advisors meet, but it is also a place to remember the past. You belong here as well. Ryan looked around, taking in the intricate designs of the garden and the serenity it offered. I never imagined anything like this. The galaxy, it is far bigger than I ever thought. Taro stepped beside him, arms folded behind his back. It is bigger, yes, but it is also fragile. Every action matters. That is why we are grateful to you. You showed us that even small choices, like sharing food with 2 hungry children, can change the fate of millions. Ryan smiled faintly. I only did what I felt was right. I never expected it to matter. Mira knelt beside him, her eyes shining. It mattered more than you know. Your kindness saved us, gave us life, and allowed the empire to rise. Without you, we would not exist. You are part of our story, Ryan, and we wish to honor that. The Empress and her brother led him through the cruiser, showing him the halls where strategies were made, ships were designed, and ambassadors from other worlds were welcomed. Everywhere Ryan went, people bowed or nodded in respect. He felt an unfamiliar weight of honor settle upon him. He was not a warrior, not a scholar, not a ruler. He was simply a mechanic, yet he had earned the gratitude of an entire empire. During a break in the tour, Ryan and Mira stood at a viewing window that overlooked a fleet of ships in formation. The ships glinted under the light of distant stars, moving in precise coordination as if guided by a single mind. Mira turned to him and said, Ryan, the fleet you see protects not only our people but countless others. Because you gave us life, your actions indirectly saved many worlds. Your kindness multiplied beyond measure. Ryan looked at the ships, feeling a deep sense of humility. He had spent years fixing small engines in his workshop, never imagining that a single act of care could ripple outward across space. I do not know what to say, he murmured. You need not say anything, Mira replied. Let your heart know that it is enough to have chosen well when you had the chance. That is all we ask of anyone. The next day, Taro requested Ryan's help in the engineering bay. Despite the vast resources and advanced technology of the Empire, there were systems and devices that required a human touch. Ryan worked alongside engineers, showing them ways to simplify complex designs and improve efficiency. His knowledge of practical solutions, honed over years in a small outpost, impressed even the most skilled Dracona engineers. You have an unusual perspective, Taro said, watching Ryan adjust the wiring on a navigation array. Your solutions are simple yet effective. That is something our people have rarely seen. Rian shrugged. I only think about what works. Complexity is beautiful, but function matters most. By the evening, Ryan was exhausted but satisfied. Mira found him sitting quietly in the garden again, the golden scale still in his pocket. She knelt beside him and said, You have given more than you realize. Not just to us, but to this empire, and now it is time for us to give something to you in return. Ryan looked at her curiously. I need nothing. I want nothing. I am content with my work, Mira smiled. And yet we have a gift for you, not of power, not of wealth, but of recognition and trust. She reached into a small box at her side and pulled out a crystal insignia. It glowed softly, warm to the touch. This is the seal of the royal house. With it, you are recognized as an honored ally of the Dracona Empire. Wherever you go, you will have our protection and the gratitude of our people. Rian took the insignia, feeling its weight and warmth. I do not know what to say, he whispered. Say nothing, Mira replied. Let it remind you that even one small act of kindness can change the course of history. The following days were filled with ceremonies and audiences. Ryan met diplomats, scholars, and warriors from distant worlds, all eager to see the human who had changed the fate of an empire. Children of the Dracona learned about him in lessons, not as a ruler, but as a symbol of courage and compassion. Rian still missed his quiet life in Outpost 12. He thought of the workshop, the metal sands, and his friend Lean. One evening, he approached Mira and spoke quietly. Your Majesty, I am grateful beyond words for your generosity, but my place is back in my workshop. I do not belong here among empires and fleets. Mira regarded him with understanding, then returned. You will always have a home here, but your choice to live simply does not diminish your honor. In fact, it makes it greater. You acted without expectation, and that is true courage. Ryan nodded. He knew she was right. The Empire had given him respect and recognition, yet he sought only simplicity and purpose. Before leaving, Mira and Taro guided him back to his original ship, now upgraded and maintained by the Empire's finest engineers. The golden scale he had kept for years rested on the dashboard, gleaming in the light. Ryan smiled. It was a reminder that even the smallest actions could echo across time and space. The cruiser ascended with him aboard, and the outpost below grew smaller with every passing moment. He looked at the stars, feeling a mixture of pride, peace, and humility. The galaxies were vast, but he understood at last that one human could make a difference. Weeks later, Ryan returned to Outpost 12. His workshop awaited him just as he had left it. Lean greeted him with wide eyes. Master Rian, you returned. Ryan smiled. I did. The Empire is strong and safe, but my place is here, repairing machines, helping those who need it, and living simply. Lean nodded. You have done more than anyone could imagine. People talk about you even now. They say the human who fed 2 lost dragons changed the stars themselves. Ryan laughed quietly. Perhaps. Or perhaps I only did what anyone should have done. The outpost welcomed him back, and life returned to its quiet rhythm. Yet Rian knew that somewhere far beyond the systems he tended, the Empress Mira and General Taro were watching, ready to protect him if ever danger arose. His life had not become more complicated. It had become meaningful in ways he could never have predicted. Years passed. Ships continued to come to Outpost 12 for repairs. Travelers spoke of a mysterious human honored by a dragon empire, and Rian continued his work. The golden scale and the crystal insignia rested side by side on his shelf. They were silent reminders of the bond between species, the power of small choices, and the extraordinary life that could grow from simple acts of kindness. Sometimes, at night, Ryan would step outside looking at the stars, imagining Mira and Taro soaring through the galaxy. He knew that even the smallest being could change the fate of millions. The universe, in all its vastness, had room for compassion, courage, and the quiet strength of a human mechanic. And so Rian worked, lived, and dreamed, carrying with him the knowledge that one simple choice, a meal shared with 2 hungry, lost dragons, had changed the galaxy forever.